Welcome to the Doctors Building Wealth podcast. Today, we're excited to have Sébastien Grosjean joining us today. He is a real estate investor and founder and CEO of Smily. Smily is a company that provides a platform for not only short-term rental owners, but also short-term rental property managers. And they manage over 30,000 properties in over 100 countries. Welcome, Sébastien.
Yeah, good morning. Hello, everyone.
So Sébastien, we met in the Tony Robbins world, and we just were so impressed by what he was doing and all that he has learned, and from growing his own family business of short-term rentals and then building this platform and working with so many people who are managing short-term rentals. So wanted to have him on here today to talk about his entrepreneurial journey and share some short-term rental nuggets with all of us. So Sébastien, can you kind of tell us a little bit about your background and your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure, with pleasure, Leti and Kenji, and thanks everyone for tuning in. So yes, this entrepreneur journey started quite a while back. So overall, my parents are entrepreneurs as well themselves. So interestingly enough, they started by being a kinesiotherapist. So they have a touch, let's say, in the care of people and their well-being. So not as deep as doctors, but that's where they started. And the first entrepreneurial journey was creating a gym. So they did this before my birth, just the first 2 years of that. And then that's where they started already with short-term rentals. So I've pretty much seen short-term rentals for 38 years of my life. I'm 40 now. And so always seen that. And as part of that journey, they always also led me with this mindset of you have to work to earn money. So I remember doing things very early on to already do this. And so that can go on the things that I think is good for the ego, which is like collecting cigarette butts from the terrace so that it's clean for the guest, as well as some things that are definitely much more fun and relaxed. But yes, that was very interesting to already have that so early on in my life. And then from there, I did a lot of different things. So creating websites, I actually started to create the first website for their business of short-term rental in 1998.
Wow.
So that was quite a while back. And at this point, I was creating websites for also quite a few other people and to help them get this online presence. And so ultimately, I ended up really creating that passion for IT, software development, I'd say. That's where I did my studies. But I had a tough medical issue that led me with a hyper paranoia. So from your audience in the medical care, that would definitely I think resonate maybe with some of the patients, maybe some of their own history or family history. So that led me to a psychiatric institute. I was supposed to stay there at least 2 years, but if going out, medicated for life. And that was quite something because yeah, we met through the Tony Robbins event, and for me that was quite a shift already. I was 20 years old when that happened, and it's really that every thought that I had was, where is the threat?
Mm.
And so when you have a question like that is in your head like this, when you have a belief system that every single input you get is a death threat, and it's not even in the moment, it's like any moment later, so it's even worse. So the biggest risk is that you kill yourself or kill someone, so that's why you get internalized. But very fortunately, I have a lot of people in my family in the medical care, so whether that's traditional, whether that's alternative, both. And I'd say by the grace of God, like 4 months later, I was good. So after 3 days, I was out of that institute under close surveillance, but I was out. 4 months later, I was out of medication and doing great. And 6 months later, I was traveling the world. So that's been such a blessing. And at the same time, it really set me up on a different trajectory, because that's also when I stopped my studies in Paris. I could not restart just yet. And so I did my second year of study while traveling, fully remote. And so that was in 2003. since June 2003, that's when I got internalized, and then we can see the timeline from there. And ultimately, that's where it's really resonated that I can work remotely, I can do great stuff. I ended up finishing a major of promotion, and so I was like, oh, remote actually does work great. I traveled the world in so many countries. I remember I was au pair in Japan and did some website and cleaning toilets in exchange of being accommodated and fed, and a couple other countries like this. So it was a strong experience, but that fed the notion of travel as well as the notion of remote and contributing through technology. And so if we look 20 years forward, it's now 13 companies that I've built, including Smily, that was formerly named Booking Sync. So really the start was to synchronize bookings, and maybe we can go further into how it came to life. But ultimately, that's 13 companies created in 4 different continents, as founder, co-founder, either way. And really 20 years where I travel at least 6 months a year. So I understand, I believe, the industry of short-term rental, particularly as an owner, as a manager, as a service provider, but also as a traveler, because that's what I do pretty much all the time. And I'm French, but I'm currently in Sydney in a short-term rental. that's pretty much like that nonstop.
Well, I have to say, I didn't actually know that whole story about being institutionalized. And now that you have brought it up, which I think is extremely brave, but an amazing segue, because I think that entrepreneurship can be very challenging for people. It involves a lot of failure for all of us as entrepreneurs. It is a lot of testing, failing, and pivoting over and over again.
And a lot of threats.
Yeah, and a lot of threats. So can you talk a little bit about how you manage your mindset around all of this, having built these 13 companies? I'm sure there were other companies or other situations that were challenging along the way, and how you would talk to maybe somebody newly starting out as an entrepreneur who has never been through the mental stress that truly entrepreneurship does bring.
Yeah. Yeah, I relate, lady. So building a company is everything but a smooth ride. and I think it's good that you don't know that before, because if you really knew everything, you would not even dare to go. But it's good. Overall, that's where the best happened. You might not, at least I did not see that this way on the way. It's still not. But ultimately, that's where the biggest fun, the biggest growth, and the biggest purpose, I would say, happened, is that spiritual game where you really expand yourself, but also your soul to something that is greater than you, and you're able to impact much beyond yourself. And so going back to that, indeed, the mindset for me that helps is following this experience of paranoia. It really helped me to realize that my mindset is dictating my reality. The belief that I have is actually what creates my life experience. So if I focus on everything is a threat, well, my life is miserable, and in life survival all the time. Now, if I look at the other way and I say, where's the opportunity? Well, then you just see opportunities everywhere. And so the power of your belief is so important. And for me, that's one of the things I would bring, really paying attention to your belief system. And it's not easy, because the biggest challenge with beliefs is that you believe they're true. But ultimately, they might not be. And so one of the questions that really helped me so much, and still does, is to ask myself, what if? Or what if the opposite was true? And when you ask yourself that, it's like, oh yeah, no, you can't do that. Or somebody else might tell you this, or maybe even a mentor might tell you, oh no, you can't do that. Or the person that you have maybe the most esteem for. And then you're like, oh, but what if? What if the opposite was true? And you might realize that in many cases, you can actually do that. And so in many instances, I would say, dare to challenge what's possible or not, and check with yourself, not from a place of ego, but a place of what resonates with you. I had was Dean Graziosi, I think, that said, your dreams was given to you by God because you're the one that is able to basically create them, to make them come true. So if others don't see them, well, that's normal. They were given to you, not to them. So don't wait the validation of someone else for your ideas, for what you're able to create. Just go for it.
That's very powerful. The idea that if it came to your mind, it means that it's possible, right? Because I think a lot of us assume that if something's in our mind, it may not be possible at all, but that you're presupposing that it is possible. And not only that, that really there's a reason that it's there, that you really need to do it. I can see how that would be very powerful in driving you. So I want to shift a little bit and ask you about the 13 companies that you've built. So what have you learned along the way about being an entrepreneur, about putting together teams, and building businesses in general?
Yeah, I'd say if I had to take maybe 2-3 things top, the first one is mindset. No matter how tools, techniques, tactics, strategies, if you don't have the mindset, you're gonna stay stuck. And so if something doesn't move on as you expect over time, or the same thing keep happening, check inside. The problem is not out there, it's within. So at least for me, that has been so true so many times over. I'm not sure for you. That's the whole thing.
No.
This game is really it's an internal game.
Yes,
So
totally. And
that's my own truth. It might not be yours.
No. I mean, it's the chokehold on every business is the mindset of the owner, right? Always. And so if your business isn't growing or achieving the way you want it to, it's ultimately, it's actually on you. You haven't become the person that you need to be able to take that business to the next level. For sure. We're completely aligned.
Yeah, I believe a lot of entrepreneurs down the line have actually some conclusion of that form that keeps aligning. But yeah, the mindset is phenomenal. And one more thing I would bring that we hear quite a bit, but maybe not as much as I see it's profound, is what gets you there will not get you where you want to. So what gets you here will not get you there. So that's what gets you here. What got you here will not get you there. And it's interesting that in practice, I realized that it's pretty much the opposite. So while you start, you have to do everything alone. To be able to go to the next phase of growth, you have to pretty much stop doing things alone. You have to let go. And it's tough because it's this amount of control of one thing that made you so successful to start. And then you have to really let go of control and make sure you leverage somebody else. So still ensure that it's done properly, but leverage it to someone else so that it gets done without you, so you can expand some other aspects. And this applies in so many ways. And it can be the belief that you had that this is the most important in business. And tomorrow is like, oh, what if the opposite was true? And that will certainly be what makes you go to the next level. And so I find this quite hilarious in some way. It's always introspection, reassessing, and seeing what's true now. Not what worked before, what will work later, but right now, in the present. What is the thing that relates now?
So when you realized that you were going to have to transition at some point from being a solopreneur to building teams and to finding your who's, what lessons can you give to entrepreneurs about making that transition and getting the right people around you?
I will start with a belief, because growing up, I heard quite a bit that having a team is the most difficult thing. Managing people is the most difficult thing. And overall, it created me a lot of stress. So for a long time, I wanted to create things only on my own. And well, that's not sustainable. You can only stretch yourself so thin. Even if you use technology, even if you automate a lot of things, there's a limit to how much you can do on yourself. And it's not as fulfilling, that's for sure. And so it started with that belief. And as well, being remote so early on, so like 20 years ago. So that's a time where remote was not trendy. and creating a team remote, I mean, this started for Smily in 2014. So 10 years ago now. Well, that was also not something you can do. And I ask a lot of people, okay, can you do this and everything? And everywhere I ask, nope, you cannot do that. If you want to work with a team, you need an office, you need to stay there. And I really didn't want to do this. And so again, check in with yourself and see what resonates with you. And I would say, dare to freestyle your life and make your own path. Because going back, your own dreams are yours to be able to make true. And now that you have that, for me, the most important is connecting with people and collaborating with people that share the same mindset, or at least there is a common core values. These core values are so important. And so has the same vision and really relate with that vision. So people that you want to work with, for me, should not be people that are here just for money, but that should be here because they really believe in the mission and the vision of that particular endeavor. They really want to see that come through. And these values is what they incarnate every day. And ultimately, as a business owner, it took me so much time to understand, okay, what is this and how complex is that to create values and so on. One tip that I finally came to realize is that creating your own values is nothing more than just looking at your past and looking at what you have done. What was the guiding principles that got you there and resonate with you, that are authentic with you as a business founder, as a CEO. And this is what you want to find more people that are aligned with. So for example, for Smily, that would be full ownership. The point is not to blame others, it's to take full ownership. Then you do have growth mindset. Then you have integrity. And we have 8 like that, team spirit and so on and so forth, respect over judgment, and more like this. But this is things that you want to make sure all your team align on. And then the second facet to this, which is a funny paradox to some extent, is you want people that are not like you. So in one way, you want them the same as you on the values, but different than you and possibly opposite than you, because they will bring a different set of skills. So you can be around the table and not all the time agree together, because if you all agree, nobody is seeing the things that is different, that stand out, that nobody sees. And ultimately, that is the biggest threat, the thing you didn't see coming. And so having people with different expertise, different backgrounds, different way of seeing the world is a gift. And so for me, this paradox of sameness through core values and seeing the world differently with different experience and just way to see the world.
So I want to highlight a number of things that you've said that we have found also to be true. So your company values are really important to define, and they do come from you and how you've shown up and how you act in the world. You're actually, because your company is an extension of you, your core values are actually the really big drivers for you generally. And I'll tell you, we were laughing while you were talking because ownership is one of our core values and growth mindset is one of our core values. We only have 4, so we kind of try to keep it very simple, but that is 2 of our 4 because those are really, those drive who we are as well. And then you were talking about hiring people who share the same values as you, and we hire and we let go team members according to our cultural values, right?
And evaluate on a regular basis.
Evaluate a regular basis based on, I mean, we're really looking for A players, and they have the culture fit and they also have the performance fit of being able to achieve those outcomes. And so those values, but then you want people who are different than you. And what we use on our company is the DISC profile, right? And we look at, what are the strengths and energies that the person needs in this position, And a lot of times they need to be different than us because the position requires a different personality. And so I love that, because conflict is good. And without conflict, your business will not grow. Everyone will think the same. Everyone will do the same thing, and you won't see the blind spot. So I just wanted to highlight what you're saying. And I know Kenji has a question, but I just wanted to reiterate it because I thought it was all gold.
Yes, thank you. And as a matter of fact, we use a disc profile as well. It's been such a blessing to use this.
Awesome. Now you mentioned Smily, a company you started 10 years ago. So when you started, what was the problem that you were looking to solve with this company?
Yeah, great question. So my parents doing short-term rentals for 38 years now. The approach was initially where rent properties of others, and then they went on the journey of being owners. So technically, they even built an hotel first. So the first ownership in the short-term rental world was actually with an hotel, so slightly different industry, where they did hotel, restaurant, shop, like ski rentals, and so many things. And after that, they moved to actually more traditional short-term rentals, vacation rentals. So that was in the mountains in France, in the Alps. And the path has been to buy the land, build the property, rent the property in groups. So it's easier to manage. So groups of 10 to 20, 25 properties, then put that under management and move on to do that to another location. So they have done that in 4 places, still 3 active, built 100 properties, still 50 under management, half in full ownership, building 10 more as we speak. And overall, what really led to the creation of Smily was that when they started in Greece, because they did this in the Alps in France, in the south of France, so in the Côte d'Azur, and then in Greece, they went actually, when I went for study in Paris, they went for 2 years for sailing around Mediterranean and really enjoyed having a life freedom and a financial freedom. So for them, they really had made it. So they were around 40 years old, and they had managed to get these properties that are owned, that are rented, cash flow generating, and under management. So they could sail the world and still have this to fuel their life, basically. So that was really amazing. Well, until I hit this roadblock, and then they really dedicated all their attention and effort to make sure I get back on track. And I'd be eternally grateful to them for that. It's been such a gift. And ultimately, after that, they started to, they fell in love with this place in Greece on an island called Lefkada. And again, found the land, started to build a property. And the same journey started again. So now they're there for 20 years and still like 15 properties there and 10 more being built. But when they arrived and the first property was about to be rented, they realized that what worked in France, which was tourism offices, so that's this institution where the traveler, you would go and ask a lot of questions about the local area. And they would also put you in contact with all the different accommodation options, including short-term rentals. And their job was really to bring leads to the short-term rental owners and managers, so you can contact them back with snail mail or phone calls, because that's really how it was. And so you get back to them and hope you get in contact and get them to book with you. And ultimately that move on to more emails and potentially website and linking to your website. And that was like so old school. And going in Greece, you had a tourism office, but it's not only until we kind of get closer to rent and get closer to have the property ready to advertise to realize that they didn't work the same way. It was more like an organism that was controlling the industries and an organism that was marketing your property. And so we needed to find a solution. And that's where we realized that it becomes much more digital. So here we speak in 2005. So that's quite a while back. And in 2005, that was the start of websites for advertising like this, like Craigslist, and a lot of different ones in Europe, in US, in different area. But that was a listing sites where you put your property. It's more or less tuned to this industry. Some are really niche, some are very global, but that's where you advertise. And as it was so new, you needed to be listed in many places. So you actually have a chance to get enough traffic, enough eyeballs looking at what you promote. And so with my background in IT, that's where I started to do this manually, and I was like, wow, you just spend days just updating your thing, marking your calendar up to date for the one that had it. Because when you did, it kind of pushed you up the search results. So like, oh, you actually have the key to like being on top of Google search. You just click that button like twice a day, and you say, oh, well, if I do it at the right time, it's actually at the best traffic moment. And my background being IT and being, I think, very lazy to some extent, and I would say this as a benefit to an entrepreneur, as long as you're lazy enough to work ahead so you can be lazy later. Then I decided like, okay, it cannot stay that way. And so that's where I started to create tools to automate this. So I had really like small robots that was going to the website, logging in for me, and clicking that button on my behalf. And so very quickly, I ended up moving from, you've certainly seen this meme of a monkey typing on a keyboard. So that was literally me trying to update all these listings, to a couple of weeks later, which was sailing in the ocean seas in Greece and having all these listings updated automatically and collecting inquiries because there was nothing else back then while we were sailing. And so that was a huge game changer. And so this first year having these tools in 2005, which was the first year we opened this property, we got 30% more bookings and occupancies than anyone else on the island, first year of operation. And that was because we were omnipresent. And so this omnipresent is so important in terms of actually getting your property known, getting your property booked. And it's not that we were cheaper either. So your price and occupancy is two levers that you can really play with. If you're too booked, I would say careful. Maybe your price is too low. And if you're too low, or if your price is too expensive, well, you might also miss some opportunities. So you want to play with these two levers. But that's just a side note, but important to keep in mind as well for the short-term rental ones. And so these tools basically quickly become what is now called a channel manager. But before it didn't exist. I mean, that was really the creation of channel management for the short-term rental industry. And it took a few years before actually making this a full tool. So in October 2009, that's where Booking Sync back then was created. So what's now Smily. And that's where initially was for our internal use, because I was looking to connect this tool to existing solutions, but nothing really had an API. So an API is really enabling software and software to talk together. And it was accessible only if you pay like $500 a month or something like this. It was like, with one property in Greece, okay, but that actually doesn't make much sense. And if you wanted to manage properties in other areas, which we had, you needed different accounts and so on. So it was like nonsense. And for our needs back then. And so that's where we decided to, okay, let's build it. And so we started to build this channel management brick. We started to build the property management brick, and ultimately a website builder on top of it, because my former business was actually a website builder that was international, because, well, I started to work with companies that was in Japan and all of this, and they had needs to have websites in multiple languages, and it was very hard in the past. And it's really combining all these tools that became what Smily is today, which is an all-in-one solution to manage your business. And the way we illustrate it today is Smily helps Airbnb hosts to earn in average 40% more revenue. And one of the key to do that is that we list your property in more than 1,000 channels, so including Airbnb, but also Booking.com, Vrbo, Expedia, and so many more. And you also spend less time than if you were just to manage Airbnb to do that. And so that's quite a game changer, but it's been a long journey.
Mm-hmm. I'm so impressed by how early you were, so dramatically earlier than so many of the software companies that we're now so familiar with. I'm curious about where you see things going in terms of all the AI coming in and how it's going to affect things for owners, because we have a lot of short-term rental owners who are, online. They're putting a lot of their properties on like Smily type listing services in the US. What do you think is going to be changing for them in the next, let's say, 2 to 4 years, 2 to 5 years?
What a brilliant question. I think the simple answer is we don't know. I don't know. That's for sure. And why I say that is it changed so fast that I don't think we can predict. I mean, we are at a point where about a year and a half ago, in November 2022, we had basically ChatGPT coming to the world, which has been the company to sign 1 million users in the shortest amount of time, which I think was like 5 or 7 days. Insane. And you have this tool that is able to do so much, and that changed pretty much every single business already since, in basically a year and a half. And now you have AI companies that pops everywhere. And it's not that AI is really new. We already had AI maybe 20 years back or something like this, but it was so limited, so difficult to leverage, to get the right use cases. And now it become mainstream and can disrupt any single business, including short-term rental management and, as an owner, your day-to-day life. And so it's interesting you ask this question, because now, I mean, I speak in quite a few industry events, and our focus right now is even more on the French market than ever. We want to really strengthen that even more. So as a little background, in 2021, we were nominated the world best partner of Airbnb, Booking.com, and Expedia. So we have this really strong expertise and footprint globally, but Europe is 86% of our market. France is where we have more than 50% of our inventory. And we really want to make sure that we do the best here before we can expand further, because there's so many specifics to such a tools. And so that's where we believe we can help the most as well. And France is the second largest market in the world, and the country that welcomes the most tourists per year in the world. And so when we look at AI, you're like, how far can it go? And one of the things is, I would get back to mindset. It's easy to get lost in the notion of it can be really disruptive and destructive, and you might not want to touch it or contribute to it. Yeah, that's definitely an option. You can see that it's amazing, that the best technology in the world that would change everything. Sure, everybody's free to think whatever they want. Ultimately, the way I do see it is as a tool. It's nothing more than a hammer. We just discovered the hammer. What are we going to do with it? Are we smash someone else? Are we going to break the skull with this hammer? Or are we building a house? It's just a tool. So up to us to decide what we want to do with it, being cautious and aware that this is a hammer that can be harmful, and how we want to actually leverage it to create something beautiful for the world, including your day-to-day life, including your property rental business, and make something awesome. But ultimately, you're at a time where you can spend less resources, less time, less effort to actually do more. And I find that so fascinating. And so I speak at more and more industry events, and pretty much every time now what I speak about is AI. Because I realize that while, by basically show of hand and asking the audience, more than 90% at this point have tested AI, mostly ChatGPT. That seems to be the most common. But less than 10% have used it for short-term rentals. And the last data that I had there was back in December. I have a presentation next week, so we're going to see again on this audience how it's going. It certainly grew, but it's still so little. And there's so many applications you can use it. And I'd say some of the first ones, and some that we are building right away within Smily as well, is to reply to reviews. Because by statistics of Booking.com, is 35% of travelers read replies to review to make a decision. It is so important, so critical. The reviews you reply to actually are the ones that really make you stand apart. They are communicating how you interact with your guest, even when the things are not perfect. And if you have a bad review that you reply well, and we can go into this afterwards, it's actually an amazing opportunity to show who you really are. And so if you reply blaming the other person and say, oh yeah, but you were wrong and all of this, how do you think the traveler questioning to book with you will feel? It's like, oh, if I have a bad experience, it's going to be on me. What? And so on and so forth. So that's the time where you really want to be empathic, where you really want to relate with that other person. And I'd say one of the great benefit of your audience is being doctors. You already have this innate desire to care. And I think that's what we see. A lot of our top customers with the best customer success are in the medical care, are basically with this deep desire to care for others. And that's amazing. And so being able to vehiculate that through everything you do is paramount. And that's where AI can also help, because you can train that AI to reply always with great care for the person that creates this review. So you can reply acknowledging what went wrong, or acknowledging what went well, because replying to review that was great is also important. And in this case, help them to say, well, next time we'd love to have you again, and feel free to book directly with us. So you can also like make this small tease of, well, even if that review isn't booking.com on Airbnb, well, feel free to come in direct, and all this kind of stuff. So you can plant seeds also about what is most beneficial for them, because ultimately they will pay less. I would advise at least that they pay less when they book in direct. And also for you down the line. And so AI can really be transformative for this, because you don't have to deal with the emotional charge about, okay, I need to calm down, I need to take a day before I can reply. It can create a draft and be ready in seconds, and you might just tweak it or not. And then it can help you with so many other things, whether that's descriptions, headlines. I mean, headlines like a hook for social media. It's 80% of the game. If your headline is just something you throw on the wall, you're like, no, your headline is actually much more potential. And back to headline, I would say one of the most important things is making sure that you name your property. Because if your property has no name, it's pretty much like it had no soul. And you want to make sure that your traveler creates that experience. And they want that experience that is emotional, that is connecting. And you need to connect to a soul for that. So ultimately, naming your property creates that bond already at first sight. It's like this introduction when you meet someone. What's your name? It's going deeper than just a property. It becomes the property is considered for a lifetime of memories. And so you really want to think about these things as every time you promote an experience. And AI can help you do this. And that's why I'm quite fascinating, because you need less expertise to be guided toward doing something well. So I believe when you have the right education and the right AI tools, you can actually do wonders. You still need education to review what AI create. We are at a point where, for me, AI is like 1,000 interns. You can do so much things, but you still need to be looking the outcomes before you actually end up publishing it. But it can be phenomenal.
Amazing. So we're at that point in our podcast where we close. Before we close, we always ask two questions of our guests. The first is, what is your definition of wealthy?
And maybe before that, Kenji, I will add one more thing. So to get back on Leti with AI and a little bit longer term. And one of the things I'd like to convey is great to think long term, but we are at a place where things are changing so fast. The next 10 years might see more innovation than we have seen in the last 1,000 years. And so we want to make sure that now we also look at what can I do today? And I'd like to give you with maybe two nuggets. One is use AI you can use right now. And one of them that personally, I don't use Google pretty much anymore. I use something called perplexity.ai. And so perplexity.ai, what it does is that it does the job for me. So instead of Googling and giving a list of potential websites that include my answer, going on this site to decipher through all of these things of ads and extra fluff and content and creating my own answers, Perplexity will do this for me and still link me back to the source. And so that's where ChatGPT is an assumption of what might be an answer, but is not accurate and actually pointing to a particular source. Perplexity is pulling the source, giving you back the reference, but crafting that answers you will get yourself. And you can also get it specified on actually academic documents and so forth. So it can have this crafted, more researcher approach to it. And so you still want to verify the content, but now that you can link to the source, it makes it much easier. So we say perplexity.ai is one thing you can use already right away. ChatGPT, of course, to help you create a lot of content. Make sure that you tell it about your values, your mission, how you speak as your own company. So it can create content for you, and so that can help you to reply to reviews, create descriptions, create headlines, reply to emails. Just be careful not to share like private data, because that might be used to train your model. So make sure about these things. By default, if you're not sure, don't share anything private. But yeah, already see what you can do today. Don't worry so much about tomorrow. You can do it in your spare time if you love it, but really look about what you can do now. What can you implement today or this week? And before going to the question, the second thing I would love to share with your audience is actually a treasure map. Because a lot of people go at optimizing the business, but so many opportunities when you tune in this mindset, you're like, okay, which one should I go first?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we work with our partners. So Airbnb, Booking.com, Verbo, and Home2Go as well. Home2Go is a big channel that come in. They actually have a larger inventory than many in some cases. They have like 15 million properties. It's tremendous. And so they operate with many brands as well. And so I had them on a panel back in December and really looking at how we can actually get the treasure map. Where like, just look at it, the X mark is here, don't worry too much, just dig there. Don't waste your time. And so we built that treasure map in collaboration with them and with the whole Smily team to create something that we love to give you for free, where you actually have this advice that can guide you in where to bring your business to the next level. So a bit of introspection, a little bit of education, some advice from of these top channels, and so to really help you on your journey. So we can share the link, I think maybe in the show notes or something like this, but ultimately it's smily.com/LP for landing pages /treasure-map.
Awesome.
And so this is free for you to download to access today. So I hope that will add a lot of value. And if you want from there, we can even go further and discuss about AI and anything.
Thank you.
But back to your question. Yeah, you're welcome. Back to your question about what is wealthy. I think a story will make it even more meaningful to my view on that. 2 days ago, I was in the street of Wollongong next to Sydney in Australia. And I met this man called David, which has like these big boxes of empty cans of beers and beer bottle and so on. And we just started to chat, and he started to talk for like maybe 20 minutes and tell me all his life experience and so on. And it was very interesting to see that this man was in his 60s. He was collecting empty beer bottles every day, really proud to get like $48 a week out of this recycling beer cans. And in many conceptions, you would see this as a person that is at rock bottom. That you're like, oh, in his 60s, he actually has to do that to survive. But it was not his life experience. This guy was so passionate, so proud that he was his own boss, so proud that he could make this money by doing this, that he was walking all his way around. It was like so ridiculous. It was like these days and these days and these days I go there, and then I will go here, and I know this area, that's where there is most bottles, so I keep going back there and so forth. And then I have some friends that help me to bring everything to the recycling machine. And it was so amazing. He had such a joy within him. And it really illustrated wealth. Because for me, it was not about what you do, what you have. It's really about this joy and gratitude and state that you are in. And this man was in a beautiful state. And that was so good to witness. It was such a gift that he made me to share that with me that day, to witness that. So So yeah, that's what I would say is wealthy.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Your state.
And that's a choice that any of us can make at any time.
Mhm.
So amazing.
Okay.
So then our second question is, what is one habit, strategy, or mindset that separates someone who is wealthy versus someone who is not?
Well, then going with the notion of state and beautiful state, the definition of beautiful state that I have is actually a state of non-suffering. And so the habit, and personally, I would have maybe two. One is to meditate. And so the purpose is to really calm down the nervous system. And there's so many now science as well to see how beneficial that is on stress, how beneficial that is to change your brain waves and bringing you more in a place of alpha instead of beta, which is very active, very chaotic, potentially really harming and really suffering. So that's already a very practical way that even in a couple of minutes can really help you move to a beautiful state. And second to this, but could be a part of it, it's really to be observant of your own internal world and really to like shade a light on what's happening. What's your thought? And just look at it, not from a place of judgment, but just from a place of, okay, what's coming up now? Oh, this is that thought. Oh, it's like this is happening. This is coming through. And not really to attach. I mean, this thought comes on where. We don't really care ultimately. But just to be more and more observant of this, ultimately it creates a certain disassociation to it. And you don't feel so entangled into whatever has been the origin of it. And you can start to become more free of that suffering and be on that path of more constant, beautiful state.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think a lot of pearls, of course, about short-term rentals and entrepreneurship, but I think the mindset is so valuable and really engaging to listen to you, I must say. So thank you so much, Sébastien.
Well, Leti, Kenji, thanks so much. And for everyone listening, thank you for your time and attention. All the best.